The ringtone shattered the quiet of my office like a hammer on glass. It was late, well past 9, and the hum of the city outside my window had settled into a low, droning lull. I stared at the phone on my desk, blinking at the unknown number flashing across the screen. For reasons I couldn't quite explain, my gut clenched. Hello? My voice cracked, betraying the unease I felt. Is this Mr. Logan Peters? A firm male voice asked. Yes, this is he. Who's calling? This is Officer Harrington with the Greenview Police Department. Your wife, Amanda, has been found at the Valley Heights Motel. She's in a bad state. Paramedics are transferring her to Mercy General as we speak. My heart plummeted, an icy fist gripping it. A bad state? What does that mean? What happened to her? I suggest you head to the hospital immediately, sir. The doctors will be able to explain more. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced through possibilities, each more absurd and horrific than the last. An accident? A mugging? My wife wasn't the type to frequent motels. The call ended before I could ask more. I grabbed my keys and bolted out the door, leaving my desk light burning and my laptop humming with unfinished work. The drive was a blur. Streetlights streaked past in pale smears, the silence in the car only broken by the sound of my own panicked breathing. Amanda and I had been married for 6 years. We weren't perfect, but we had something solid, or so I'd thought. The Valley Heights Motel was a crumbling relic on the edge of town. Its neon sign flickered half dead, a sickly green light illuminating cracked asphalt and the vague outlines of rusting cars, parked in shadowy corners. My stomach churned imagining Amanda there. What could have brought her to a place like this? By the time I reached Mercy General, the fluorescent lighting of the ER lobby felt like an assault. The smell of antiseptic and the distant beep of machines filled the air. A nurse at the desk looked up, her expression carefully neutral when I gave her Amanda's name. She's in surgery right now, the nurse said, directing me to a waiting room. I barely made it to the vinyl chair before the surgeon walked in, still in scrubs. His face was pale, his lips pressed into a tight line. Mr. Peters, he began, his tone measured but grim. Your wife is stable for now, but we need to complete the surgery to remove... He hesitated as if searching for the right words. To remove foreign objects that were forcibly inserted into her body. My head spun. Foreign objects? What the hell does that mean? The surgeon raised a hand, a placating gesture. We'll know more soon. For now, I suggest you prepare yourself. This might be difficult to process. Ignoring his warning, I demanded to see her. The surgeon gave me a hard look but relented. Just for a moment, he said. As I stepped into the room, the antiseptic smell was stronger. Amanda lay on the bed, her face pale and unrecognizable. Her lips were cracked, her hair matted with blood, and something else I couldn't identify. Tubes snaked from her arms. A monitor beeped steadily beside her, but my eyes were drawn to the bruises around her neck and wrists. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The woman I'd spent years with, the woman I'd laughed with, fought with, loved, was barely a shadow of herself. And then I noticed the small, crumpled piece of paper, clutched in her hand. A motel receipt. The name on the receipt wasn't mine. I snatched the crumpled receipt from Amanda's limp hand, my fingers trembling. The cheap, greasy paper bore the motel's logo, the room number, and most damningly, the name of the man who had signed for it. Evan Harlow. The name was like a gunshot to my chest. Evan wasn't a stranger. He was her colleague, a smug, overly friendly coworker from her marketing firm. I'd met him a few times at office parties, and every time, his too familiar smiles and lingering glances at Amanda made my skin crawl. I wanted to vomit. The air in the hospital room was suffocating. I stormed out, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. In the corridor, Officer Harrington was waiting. He stood up as soon as he saw me, his expression grim. I need to know everything, I barked, my voice sharp. Harrington hesitated, glancing around. Mr. Peters, this might not be the right time. Now, I growled, stepping closer. My body vibrated with anger. He sighed and gestured for me to follow him to a quieter corner. Once there, he crossed his arms. Your wife was found unconscious in room 214 at the Valley Heights Motel. When officers arrived, the scene wasn't pretty. Signs of a struggle, overturned furniture, blood. We were investigating it as a possible assault, but he hesitated. But what? Her injuries weren't consistent with an attack by a stranger. The physical evidence suggests consensual activity gone extreme. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, my vision blurred with red. And Evan? Where the hell is he? We're trying to locate him, Harrington said, his tone careful. The motel manager said he saw a man leaving the room shortly before we arrived. Based on your wife's condition, it's unclear if she was complicit or I didn't let him finish. Turning on my heel, I stormed out of the hospital. The hunt. I drove to the motel, my blood roaring in my ears. Evan's face swam in my mind, his smug grin, the way he always hovered near Amanda. I didn't care if this made me irrational. I wasn't going to wait for the police to connect the dots. The Valley Heights parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived, save for the battered sedan that belonged to the night clerk. The clerk, a wiry man with a receding hairline and a greasy uniform, looked up lazily from his cigarette as I approached. Room 214, I demanded, slamming my hand on the counter. The clerk raised an eyebrow. What's it to you? My wife was found there, I growled, and I need to know who the hell signed in with her. The clerk hesitated, but when I leaned in closer, my voice a low snarl, he relented. Look, buddy, I don't want any trouble. Evan Harlow booked it earlier tonight. Said he'd only be here for a couple hours. Where is he now? The clerk shrugged, looking nervously around. Said something about heading to the Raven Club downtown? That's all I know, I swear. I didn't wait for more. Confrontation. The Raven Club was a dive bar, infamous for its cheap booze and shady patrons. As I stepped inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and the stench of sweat. Evan was easy to spot, lounging in a booth with a glass of whiskey in hand. He looked relaxed, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, as if he hadn't just walked out on my wife bleeding and battered. The sight of him sent me over the edge. I crossed the room in long, purposeful strides, ignoring the startled looks from other patrons. Before Evan could even register my presence, I grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. His glass shattered on the floor, the noise drawing everyone's attention. You piece of shit, I roared. Evan struggled against my grip, his eyes wide with panic. Logan, wait, what the hell? Don't you dare say my name. I slammed him again, this time hard enough to knock a framed photo off the wall. Hey! Hey! A bouncer approached, but the rage boiling in me made me unstoppable. I pulled Evan forward and threw him over the table, sending plates and drinks flying. You left her there, I yelled, pinning him to the floor. You left her to die, you coward. Evan's face was pale, his lips trembling. I didn't mean... I didn't give him a chance to finish. My fist connected with his jaw, then again. Blood spattered, and he whimpered like a wounded animal. The bouncers finally dragged me off him, pulling me back as Evan lay there, coughing and clutching his face. She was your wife, man, he yelled through swollen lips. She wanted it. She asked for it. His words were like gasoline on the fire. I broke free from the bouncers and lunged again, this time aiming for his ribs. The bar erupted into chaos, shouts and screams echoing as patrons scrambled to get out of the way. By the time the cops arrived, I was sitting outside the club, my knuckles raw and bloodied. Evan had been carted off to the hospital, and I was hauled into a squad car. But I didn't care. I didn't care about the legal consequences or the bruises forming on my hands. All I could think about was Amanda, about the betrayal, the lies, and the image of her broken body in that hospital bed. And I vowed this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The house was dark when I got home, a silence so thick it was deafening. My bloodied knuckles ached as I fumbled to turn on the light. The memories of the night, the hospital, the motel, the fight, played in a loop in my head, each rotation adding more fuel to my fire. Evan's face, smug and swollen, haunted me. Amanda's betrayal carved a hollow pit in my chest. But the rage, the white-hot, all-consuming rage, kept me moving. I wasn't going to let this end in a bar fight and a few bruises. Number. If they wanted destruction, I would bring the goddamn apocalypse. Step 1. The leverage I knew where Evan worked. His company, Vandertech, was a local competitor to Amanda's firm, and they prided themselves on their family-first image. A scandal involving their senior marketing executive would be a public relations disaster. Using Amanda's spare key, I rifled through her home office. I found her laptop, opened it, and dove into her emails. She wasn't the most tech-savvy, so she hadn't even bothered with a password manager. It didn't take long to find them. Hundreds of emails between her and Evan. Some were mundane, work-related. Others, explicit. Photos, videos, messages that made my stomach churn. But there was something else. Money transfers. It seemed Evan had been funneling small amounts of company funds into a personal account. Amanda's account. Jackpot, I muttered, taking screenshots of everything. Step 2. Amanda's turn. I waited until morning before I returned to the hospital. Amanda was awake, pale but alive. When I walked into her room, her eyes widened in surprise, then shame. "Logan," she croaked, her voice hoarse. I didn't speak. I dropped a stack of printed emails and photos onto the bed. Her eyes darted to them and the blood drained from her face. "Is this what I meant to you?" I hissed. 6 years of marriage, and this is what you do? Sneak off to motels with that scumbag? Steal money for him?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Logan, please, I can explain." "You don't get to explain." My voice rose, making the heart monitor beep erratically. "You destroyed us. You destroyed me. Now it's your turn." I leaned in close, lowering my voice to a venomous whisper. "I have all the proof I need to bury you both." "Evan's theft? It's traced to your account. The cops would love to know about that, wouldn't they?" Her lips trembled. "Please don't. You didn't think of me when you were rolling around in that filthy motel," I spat. "Why the hell should I care about what happens to you now?" She sobbed, but I turned and walked out without looking back. Step 3. The ruin. The next move was surgical. I sent an anonymous email to Vandertek's HR department, attaching the screenshots of Evan's theft and the explicit messages between him and Amanda. Then, I forwarded the same email to Amanda's firm. By noon, the fallout had begun. Evan was fired on the spot. Vandertek announced an internal audit, and the police were informed. I could imagine Evan squirming as he tried to explain the missing funds, while the authorities started sniffing around. Amanda's company was less public, but no less brutal. Her boss called her personally, delivering a scathing tirade before informing her that her contract was terminated effective immediately. I wasn't done. Step 4. The flame. I uploaded the most damning photos and messages to a burner social media account, tagging both of their companies. Within hours, the posts went viral. People from both firms shared them, adding fuel to the growing scandal. News outlets picked up the story, framing it as a cautionary tale of corporate misconduct and personal depravity. Amanda called me that night, her voice frantic. "Logan, you have to stop this," she begged. "Please, I'm losing everything." "Good," I said coldly. "That's what betrayal costs." She tried to argue, but I hung up. Step 5. The finale. Evan wasn't hard to track down. He was staying with a friend, a guy as sleazy as he was. I waited until midnight, parked outside the house in my car. With a pair of gloves and a crowbar, I smashed the windows of his car and slashed his tires. For good measure, I left a printout of one of the explicit emails on the driver's seat. The next morning, I watched from down the street as Evan came outside, his face twisting in rage and humiliation. Amanda wasn't spared either. Her new status as an unemployed, publicly shamed pariah made her life hell. Friends avoided her, whispers followed her everywhere, and her family wouldn't even take her calls. I sat back and watched as their lives crumbled. Epilogue. Weeks later, Amanda showed up at my doorstep, looking hollow and defeated. "Logan," she whispered, "I have nothing left. Please, can we talk?" I stared at her for a long moment, letting the silence drag. Then I smiled, a cold, joyless thing. "You should have thought about that before you destroyed me." I shut the door in her face. In the end, they'd both been brought to ruin, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. The fallout Amanda faced wasn't enough to satisfy the inferno raging inside me. Her betrayal had ripped through every part of my life, leaving scars that wouldn't heal. But it wasn't just her. Her family, the sanctimonious, judgmental clan that had looked down their noses at me since the day we met, was complicit in this destruction. Amanda's family had always been a source of tension. Her mother, Eleanor, was a cold, controlling woman who treated me like dirt because I didn't come from moneyed stock. Her father, Robert, was a spineless sycophant who followed Eleanor's lead, nodding along to every insult she hurled my way. Then there was her brother, Andrew, a smug investment banker who seemed to delight in one-upping me at every family gathering. They had enabled Amanda's entitlement, propped her up on a pedestal, and turned a blind eye to her flaws. They had to pay, too. Step 1. Digging up the dirt. My first target was Eleanor. It wasn't difficult to unearth her secrets. People like her, who pride themselves on projecting perfection, always have skeletons in their closets. After some careful digging, I discovered that Eleanor had been embezzling funds from a local charity she chaired. The charity Hopeful Horizons was a high-profile organization that Eleanor used to burnish her reputation. But she'd been skimming off the top for years, funneling donations into a private offshore account. I compiled the evidence, bank records, emails, and witness statements, and sent it anonymously to the charity's board of directors and a local investigative journalist. The fallout was delicious. Within days, the news broke. Prominent socialite accused of embezzlement. Charity in crisis. Eleanor's face was plastered across every local news outlet, her icy demeanor now a mask of panic. Donations to the charity dried up, and angry protesters gathered outside her gated mansion, demanding accountability. Step 2. The downfall of Robert had always been a spineless coward, hiding in Eleanor's shadow, but his weakness made him vulnerable. He worked as a financial advisor for a boutique firm that prided itself on integrity. What the firm didn't know was that Robert had been running a side hustle, offering unofficial financial services to high-risk clients, read money laundering. Using the same methods I'd used on Eleanor, I unearthed a paper trail of suspicious transactions. I forwarded the evidence to his firm's compliance department and the IRS. It wasn't long before the FBI came knocking. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Robert had been escorted out of his office in handcuffs, his colleagues watching in stunned silence. The firm released a public statement disavowing him, and his reputation was in tatters. Step 3. Andrew's collapse. Andrew was the crown jewel of the family's arrogance, the golden boy who could do no wrong. He worked for a major investment bank, a position he loved flaunting during family gatherings. But Andrew had a weakness: his ego. I hired a private investigator to dig into Andrew's professional life, and what came back was a treasure trove. Andrew had been involved in insider trading, using confidential information to manipulate stock prices for personal gain. I carefully packaged the evidence and sent it to the SEC and several major financial news outlets. The story exploded. Andrew was not only fired, but faced a federal investigation. His bank accounts were frozen, his assets seized. The press had a field day, dubbing him the greedy banker. Step 4. The final blow. The coup de grace was a letter I sent to each member of Amanda's family, detailing exactly how they'd contributed to her downfall. I left nothing out: Eleanor's cold manipulation, Robert's cowardly complicity, Andrew's toxic arrogance. I made it clear that their enabling had led Amanda to her ruin. I ended the letter with a simple message: you destroyed me by creating her. Now I've destroyed you. Enjoy the ashes. Epilogue. The family's reputation was annihilated. Eleanor and Robert sold their mansion to cover legal fees, retreating to a shabby rental far from the limelight. Andrew disappeared entirely, his name a whisper of scandal in financial circles. Amanda, now jobless and abandoned by her own family, was left to fend for herself in a world that had turned against her. I watched it all from a distance, savoring the slow, inevitable collapse of everything they'd built. They had taken everything from me. Now, they had nothing. The dust settled slowly. Amanda's family had been thoroughly dismantled, their once pristine lives reduced to rubble. I had taken everything from them, piece by piece, just as they had stolen my peace of mind, my trust, and my life. But there was one loose end: Amanda herself. She had always been the spark that ignited this inferno. Though she was ruined professionally and personally, her existence still felt like a ghost haunting me. I needed to bury the last vestige of her presence to finally reclaim my life. The final conversation. Amanda called me one last time, weeks after the chaos had unfolded. Her voice was shaky, a shadow of the woman who once demanded the world bend to her will. "Logan, please, meet me. Just once. I need to talk." I almost refused, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see her in her broken state, to hear her beg, to confirm that I had destroyed her utterly. We met at a quiet diner on the outskirts of town. Amanda arrived in a cheap coat that hung awkwardly on her thin frame. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes hollow. Gone was the confident, polished woman who had once been my wife. She slid into the booth across from me, her hands trembling as she reached for her coffee cup. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, avoiding my gaze. I leaned back, arms crossed. "What do you want, Amanda?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite place. Shame? Regret? Or just fear? "I lost everything, Logan," she whispered. "My job, my family, my reputation. I know I deserve it, but I need you to know how sorry I am." I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Sorry? You think an apology erases what you did? You lied to me, cheated on me, stole from me. You betrayed every promise you ever made. Sorry doesn't cut it." Her eyes brimmed with tears, but I felt nothing. "Logan, I was weak. I let myself be swayed by the excitement, the lies Evan fed me. I thought I was chasing happiness, but I destroyed myself instead. I miss what we had. I miss you." Her voice cracked on the last word, but my heart was stone. "You miss me?" I leaned forward, my voice low and venomous. "You killed us, Amanda. You. The woman I loved is dead. You're just the corpse that's left." Her tears fell freely now, but I didn't care. She reached across the table, her hand trembling as she touched mine. I pulled away as if her touch burned. "I need help, Logan," she whispered. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know how to live anymore." I stared at her, long and hard. Then, slowly, I stood up. "You don't," I said simply. Her sobs followed me as I walked out of the diner, leaving her behind forever. The aftermath. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. The house we'd shared was sold, every trace of Amanda erased. I moved to a new city, started a new job, and surrounded myself with people who valued loyalty and trust. Amanda? She faded into obscurity. Her family abandoned her completely, leaving her to navigate her self-made wasteland alone. Rumors floated back to me about her taking odd jobs, staying in rundown motels, struggling to stay afloat. And Evan? He faced criminal charges for embezzlement and insider trading. His name became synonymous with disgrace, his life a cautionary tale for others. Closure. One evening, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, a glass of whiskey in hand. The city lights stretched out before me, a dazzling tapestry of possibility. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Amanda and her family were a distant memory now. Their lives crumbled, their power stripped. And me? I had emerged from the wreckage stronger, harder, untouchable. In the end, I hadn't just survived the storm. I'd become it.